Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 184th session of the online Optom Learning Series, OOLS. And today's session is a bit different. Today, we got not one, not two, but five panelists on the call today who are going to talk to us about in and out of myopia, what is happening in the myopia space, specifically to what is research all about in the myopia lab, where they are working, giving us an update about what is the current trend, what is the future of myopia. So to begin this session, I would take the privilege of introducing the chief, I would say, of the myopia lab at the LV Prasad Eye Institute, Dr. Pawan Verkicharla. Dr. Pawan pursued his PhD from the Queensland University of Technology, Australia, and he has also done a postdoctoral research from the Singapore Eye Research Institute in Singapore. Numerous publications in the myopia space, presented various papers around the globe in conferences as well as written papers, reviewed scientific papers because he's on the board of numerous international peer-reviewed journals. Currently, he works very closely at the Myopia Research Lab in India at LV Prasad Eye Institute. And today he is brought with him his team as the panel today. And I would now hand over to Dr. Pawan to kind of introduce the panelists, and we'll then get started. Over to you, Dr. Pawan.
Thank you, Fakhruddin, for inviting us to this wonderful platform, the online Optom Learning Series, and inviting us to be here today. Like you said, yes, I've been the face of myopia lab at LVP, but all the hard work is done by the folks that you are seeing here. Actually, we have 3 more people who are waiting outside the lab because we cannot fit everybody in. So we got, okay, we will go in for today. So I will introduce the hard and smart workers of the Myopia Research Lab. And as I said, I'm taking the pride, but trust me, these are the folks who are really working in the field, especially from India. So on my right, I have Mr. Rohit Dakal, who is the research optometrist currently pursuing PhD from the City University of London. And he's specialized in the area of light and understands interaction with myopia. So that's Rohit Dakal. Then here we have Manoj Manoharan. Manoj has joined Myopia Lab about 3 years ago and post his PGDOVS pursued from LV Prasad Eye Institute. He has worked on developing a risk score model. How many risk factors do you need? What are really good for the clinical aspect? And he looked at the anisometropia aspect as well. So we will hear more from him today on those fronts. Then on my left again, there we have Swapnil Thakur. Swapnil again pursued postgraduate diploma in optometry vision science from LVP. Post that somehow decided he has to pursue myopia as his career and then joined Myopia Lab again about 2.5 years ago. He has worked a lot on the near work, how near work really triggers for myopia, and recently started his experiments in the zone of blue light, how various wavelengths are associated with myopia, how these regulate the eyeball growth. Then we have Satish Gupta. Satish again pursued PGD from LVP. So seems like we are attracting a lot of PGDs to Myopia Lab. So PGD from LVP and then joined Myopia Lab about 2 years ago. Manoj, Swapnil, Satish, these 3 folks did their PGD project with me. Maybe that made them to really join the lab as well. So Satish works in the area of understanding the electroretinal signals in the periphery of the eye. He has already published a review in the same field and currently also looking at novel techniques for understanding more of biometry of the eye. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pawan, for introducing us to the entire team. And as you said, yeah, we could only fit few faces on the screen, but I think when we come for the conference in the near future, we'll see all of them physically as well, right?
November 18, 19, 20.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about the conference soon, but let's get started on to the subject topic, which is myopia. And I think I do have a couple of pre-planned questions which have come up with the registrations, as well as in general questions which we have been getting in all our sessions we did. So I thought, let's just bring out to you researchers and see what you have to tell us about that. Let me just quickly get started to the first and a very important question. We saw a pandemic, we saw COVID-19 as a pandemic, and now it's getting better in some places. But Satish, do you have something to tell me about the myopia pandemic? Is myopia really a pandemic? And how would you kind of tell me the trend in the Indian scenario versus the global scenario? Do you have some takeaway messages for us?
Yes, I do have. So myopia is definitely a global pandemic affecting around 34% of the world population, so which is equivalent to around 2.6 billion by 2020. And the recent studies, it has predicted that almost half of the world's population, that is equivalent to, that is close to 5 billion people, they will be affected by myopia by 2050. So this was the global scenario. And if we see the regional wise, so East Asian countries are most have experienced a very steep increase in the prevalence of myopia. And among the Asian countries, if we focus on the South Asia, India has the highest myopia prevalence. And research has also shown that within the in the time period between 1980 to 2008, around 6.6% of the Indian population were myopic, which increased up to around 14.2% by 2019. And currently, the prevalence of myopia in India is around 21%, which is estimated which is predicted to increase to 32% by 2030, 40% by 2050, and around 48% by 2050. So myopia is definitely global as well as regional pandemic across worldwide, and so the different stakeholders in myopia should definitely look into it to control the progression of myopia in the coming future. Otherwise, the future generation will not forgive us.
That's right. And we have been hearing about this, right? And I can see Dr. Pawan, he's one of the co-authors of the paper about the prevalence prediction model of the Indian context. And I do know that he has been working along with his team. So Dr. Pawan, anything to add on what Satish says? Satish has given us good numbers and asked us to be very cautious as primary eye care practitioners so that the future generation kind of forgives us. I would put it in a positive way.
No, I think the paper was written by Jacinth from our group. So like Satish said, I think we're definitely looking at big change in the numbers from what we're seeing now. Point to note is that there is a bit of variation between the rural and the urban regions. So, when we say 48%, especially we highlight the urban scenario, but rural, maybe the things are very different. You're still looking at much lower prevalence rates. Yeah, long story short, yes, the numbers are increasing, the regional variations. The truth is that the children living in urban regions, we don't know the reason for why this is the case, but the risks are much higher in those areas.
Right, correct. And the next question, again, it's very, I would say, related to the prevalence and things like that. But I would go to Rohit now and, kind of learn about the association of near work and myopia. Do you want us to tell something about the near work, outdoor activities, and how does it really affect myopia? Anything to add on those lines?
Yeah, sure. So I would to talk more about near work and myopia to Swapnil Suryavi and the things, but time outdoors and myopia definitely, since I'm also working in this field a lot. And I think so whatever myopia boom was presented by Satish, and then Pawan also told us about like 50% of them would be myopic by the year 2050. in India also, and even the same scenario is there in globally also. So I think spending more time in the outdoors, this will help to slow down incidence of myopia, so that in future there won't be we don't see such a myopia boom. So what recent research has found that spending more time in outdoor will decrease the incidence of myopia, but it may not be so much helpful in case of slowing down progression of myopia in those children who are already myopic. But again, so, I would still want to highlight that we should tell children to spend more times in the outdoors, because this can have a substitution effect in near work. So by the term like substitution effect, I mean to say that if we ask children to spend more time at outdoors, then they may be spending lesser time at doing near work, because near work is one of the more thought to be one of the important risk factor for myopia progression. So if we send them outdoors, then maybe they will spend lesser time at doing near work. So this way there will be a substitution effect even in those kids who are already myopic. But if children has not developed myopia yet, so it is a good idea to send them outdoors, and so that like in future we can reduce incidence of myopia. And maybe Swapnil can add more about near work in myopia.
Yeah. Maybe just to highlight what Rohit has indicated is purely from an evidence point of view.
Yeah.
As a part of his PhD, he has conducted an overview of systematic reviews. So now multiple papers in one shot analyzed, and then now he's indicating that it might really be good for prevention, but may not really work for the controlling progression. But as he indicated, substitution effect is something worth looking at.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, which is kind of to tell the parents that they need to bring their kids outside, and that substitution, rather than telling them don't do this, and they not doing this, but we telling them do this, so that the substitution effect helps in that myopia control is what we are looking for. So I think that's a very brilliant idea, and backed up with all your hard work of reading, I guess probably hundreds of papers to do that review, right? So thank you for that hard work, for reading for us and not let us read, and we just go and read your paper and get all the idea about it. Great. Over to you, Swapnil. Anything to add on that?
First of all, thank you, Fakruddin, for bringing in the concept of near work, because recently, because of the COVID pandemic, everybody is spending more in indoors and they are more engaged in the online classes. So the near work has been a very important thing, has become a very important thing recently. So so what generally it has brought is that now the people are thinking that the smartphone has become a risk factor for myopia development or myopia progression. But one should be aware of the fact that the myopia, the prevalence of myopia has been increasing for decades, and it's not recently, right? And then in the time where there was no smartphone, there was no digital device, then also we are seeing the higher rate of myopia prevalence. So which indicates that the recent association of smartphone and then myopia indicates that the smartphone is an independent and the additional risk factor of myopia. What I mean by saying that is that we should not ignore that reading on a paper could be also important for myopia progression and myopia development. So we should not equate, I'll say that we should not equate the watching a movie or a smartphone on a smartphone to a smaller text on a hard copy. This should not be comparable. So recently, in-house studies, our lab has published one experimental study where we have given our participant 15 minutes of time reading on a smartphone, watching a video on a smartphone, and then reading on a paper. So interestingly, what we found is that reading on a paper and reading on a smartphone both caused axial elongation. And if I'll emphasize on reading on a paper, it has caused more axial elongation after 15 minutes compared to reading on a smartphone. So we should be very cautious enough to say in the clinics that don't use smartphone, and rather than use paper, read on a paper. We should consider that both smartphone and reading on a paper for a prolonged period could be equally and independently influence the myopia development and progression.
I think Rohit will remember this conversation while writing our review paper, the meta-analysis.
Yeah.
One of the things in the discussion was currently the recommendations are oversimplified.
Yeah.
Be it time outdoor. Now looking at Swapnil's point, I think even for near work, we say no smartphone. I think that's a bad thought. Maybe we should be more specific in what we really recommend. When we check out the patient, I think just don't say go outdoors and play. They're outdoors. Under the parking is also outdoors for them. So I think currently it's oversimplified, and we have to be much more cautious and much more specific in what we say with regards to both time outdoor and near work.
Yeah, that's right. And I think these two thoughts which came up is more on the clinical oriented side, because what you are telling us out of the research outcome, what a clinician should keep in mind that, as Dr. Pawan said, go outdoors. Parking is outdoors, go outdoors. People will just go to their ground floor, which is indoors. They are not going into the ambient light. And that's a very important key message which a clinician should be passing away in an appropriate manner. Yeah. Okay, coming on to the clinician side again, I would like to ask Manoj about this question. I think, can you tell us more about the recommended measurements? Because Dr. Pawan did mention you have developed the risk model and things like that. Would you want to tell us more about what are the clinical measurements? How would we take into account all of those to monitor and to measure myopia progression, or in a new myopic patient? Any thoughts over that?
Thank you, Fakdev, for that question. So we usually in our clinic, we will map a set of parameters like based on the environmental factors, structural factors, functional, as well as the optical factors. So environmental in the sense, whatever the Rohit and the Swapnil indicated, time outdoors, how much time they are spending outside, how much time they are spent for the near work. Apart from that, in order to understand what is the risk factor, we usually map the peripheral refraction pattern, accommodative lag factor, as well as the Fourier status. So which factor is really triggering for that particular patient to increase in the progression? So based on that factors only, we usually prescribe the anti-myopia strategies, because for example, somebody who is having the peripheral refraction pattern, we are seeing a hyperopic pattern in the periphery, retinal periphery. So that is the one of the risk factor for particular that patient. So in order to control that progression, we have to counteract that factor first. So in those cases, we usually prescribe the peripheral defocus lenses to control the myopia progressions. So all these factors will come into picture that which anti-myopia strategies we can give to that particular patient. Right. So one other thing is like, in order to just find the patient is the risk of myopia progression, we don't need all the factors to understand it. If suppose like the patient, we know that the change in the refraction in an year and also the current refraction, that indicates that the patient is the risk of myopia progression. So, however, if we map all the risk factors like the lack of accommodation, peripheral refraction, esophoria, and also the environmental factors. So all these things which will give an idea that which is the appropriate treatment modality which we can prescribe to that particular patient to control the myopia progression. So based on that, we also developed one model called EMPRAS model, myopia progression risk assessment model, the similar way what I told. So that will indicate the patient is the risk of myopia progression based on all these factors, and also gives an idea that which is the appropriate anti-myopia strategy which we have to give to the particular patient to control the progression.
Right. So I think that is an important thing as well, because you all combined, if I may not be wrong saying that all of you combined have more than 3 decades of experience in working with myopia, combined. You know more than us combined, but the message is very important to the clinician. Like how you said, you have to look at each thing separately and individually and see what works best so that we can advise our patients very clearly, right, in terms of what strategies are available and what would work good, we hope, what would work good for the patient.
Fakhruddin,
Yes.
you're not that old. I just counted the number of years.
Yeah, probably my age would be combined age of your experience in myopia. I may put it that way. Great. So let me come to Dr. Pawan. Dr. Pawan, what's the future? I mean, now we know that there are these near work accommodation. We know that reading and all of these things are really important. And with that experience in the lab, can you tell us more about what is in for us in the future? A future prediction in terms of myopia management and things like that. Yeah.
I think the first point has come up, we're looking at the pandemic, looking at half of the world's population to go myopic. I don't know if I have to say the future looks bright in one sense, because, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. We clearly do not know what is really triggering, what has to be done. We're only going with, based on the literature. A lot needs to be done in the field. So I think the scope of myopia research, the scope of myopia practice is huge. I always say both in one shot. I cannot delink myopia clinics from myopia research, because the evidence, every day there is something coming out. Every day there are multiple publications. There's also this saying, if you are not really updated, you will be outdated soon. So on that context, the rich information coming out, and if you still practice, providing single vision, leaving everything out, I think, you're not doing justice. So number one, I think there is a huge scope looking at the numbers, not just the numbers, but we also look at the progression. One of our publications indicated that about 11% of them progress by more than one diopter. Which means, these are the ones who need myopia control strategies. So which means there is need for the eye care professionals who are specialized in this zone. Now, you have to be specialized in this zone, but I'm saying that please do not delink both, because, you will be outdated soon if you go with just the old school of thought.
That's right. Yeah. And I think there's one pressing question. I'll just take that up while we are on the discussion that just came up in the chat. It asks about any ideas or comments on reading on an ebook reader, because now people are into ebook reader versus, paper and Kindle kind of thing. So have you performed any such experiments or things like that? Would you want to have any thoughts or comments? I think I would direct it to Swapnil. Yeah, because he's working on that aspect. So probably you can give us some.
So I'll be talking, I'll give evidence from the papers which have been published. So what they have said that e-readers and then the traditional conventional books are different in terms of the accommodative function. However, if you'll ask me that instead of reading on a paper, I'll read on an e-book, I'll say no, because e-books mainly came into market because they mimic the traditional conventional books in against smartphone. So now people prefer more e-book reading for who are more prolonged readers. But I would recommend that let it be the smartphone or e-book reader or a paper. Don't do prolonged reading. Don't read for more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Take a break in between and then continue whatever you are doing.
Right. So probably I would say, just correct me if I'm wrong. I would say the time is really important, not the matter or the thing or what. The time taken to do that task is what you need to emphasize on, rather than what is the task. Is the time, T-I-M-E in caps lock, right?
Any near can trigger, let's say anything near can trigger. So take more breaks, like Swapnil indicated.
That's right.
Near working distance, that is also very important. So how close you are working and how far you are working.
Yeah.
Right. So, and what is the recommended distance? I mean, everybody knows, but just a quick question. What do you think would be,
What is the recommended distance? Like you said, everybody knows.
Yeah.
I think it's very tricky zone. If you say 40 centimeter, somebody like a child 2-year-old has a different working distance. So I think the farther the better. I do not have an answer. I'm looking at the 4 others in the room. If you have any better answers, the farther the better. Anything that you want to
I
highlight?
think, that's what, harder the better, maybe around 35 to 40 centimeters. That's what the usual working distance that we have. But still, like what Swapnil said and everybody emphasized, there should be a regular break in every half an hour to 40 minute, 2 to 3 minute break, then again continue your reading.
Correct. Yeah. So I think that whole winds up to time rather than keep into account the task as well as the distance, the farther the better. So couple of key points. I think these phrases or statements are very important for us to, as clinicians, I'm talking as a clinician, to be conveyed to the parents as well as the patients when we are talking to them. It's really important that we convey the correct message, and how well can we do that is what is important, right? And the other question, I think I'm just reading up one question about e-metropization, and I think anyone can take that. There has been a change in the e-metropization timeline compared to what it was a couple of decades ago. If that's true, what could we expect now as the age of e-metropization? Any experiments which you probably have done or have some evidence to talk about this?
I'm just looking at who has asked this question. So this is Preeta Ramprasad. Okay.
Yeah.
So Preeta, please join us at the IMARC. This takes, a lengthy discussion. But, recently at the IMC as well, this topic has been discussed in length.
Yeah.
Is e-metropization is the right word? Not everybody attains the e-metropization. There is no cutoff. Like say, okay, is it the 7-year is a cutoff or 15-year is the cutoff? When does it really stabilize? I think it's beyond the scope of our understanding of, to tell that, is this what it is? But there is generational change, like I think Preeta has mentioned it, there is generational change, but it is difficult to gauge and say, hey, the 6 has moved to 12, maybe it is difficult to answer at this point of time.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Great. So thank you so much for, highlighting the key points. And I think I'll just go one more question for you guys, and then we can continue the questions coming on the chat. So thank you so much to the audience to be so enthusiastic. Please keep those questions coming. We can then prick their brains and get some information out. That really helps as well. Then the next question I think I have here is, we do have a couple of young researchers, students who are attending the call and who will be watching the panel discussion in the future as well. My question is kind of simple as well as tricky at the same time. What was the trigger factor to enter this myopia space? And probably I will direct this to Satish and Swapnil if you want to give us some background about why myopia. There's so many things out there. Why not others, and why just myopia?
Their job is at stake now.
Interview question.
So I would like to take the question. And what happened is during my undergraduate program at Shankara College of Optometry, Bangalore. So as we all know, everybody has to do a research project. So my project mentors and faculty, Aparna ma'am, Namrata ma'am, and Tapasar was there. So because of them, I developed so they taught me how to address a research question. So after that, because of them only, I developed a keen interest in optometry research, and I got because of them, I got my undergraduate research paper published also. And later during the 4th year of my program, that is during internship, I used to come across a lot of questions and concerns from the parents of the myopic kids. So why the kid has myopia and why it's developing in spite they are wearing the glasses. So to be honest, I didn't have answer to the question that time. So because of this, I developed a curiosity as a clinical intern. Why does myopia develop and why does it progress even after the optimal refractive error correction? So this, so to answer this one, and because of this, I developed keen interest in myopia research. And after that, after completing my graduation, I came to LVP and I joined postgraduate diploma in optometry and vision science. and I worked as a research fellow at that time, and I worked with Dr. Pawan in a myopia research lab, so investigating the electroretinal responses, that is by multifocal ERG, as a function of retinal eccentricity and peripheral refraction. So this way I developed interest in myopia research, and this is how I got into myopia research.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you had that trigger factor during your research project, and I think a lot of a lot of students I think would have that. So the key message, the key message for asking this is because you have some trigger factor and look out for it. I think there is a lot of information out there. I'm talking in general about the optometry as well, but this is the myopia talk, right? So yeah, that's the important. Anything to add on in that, Swapnil? Anything to add?
So I opted for research at LVP, because especially at LVP, because I think that at LVP you have the it gives the environment here to expand your knowledge. Exactly. So it will gain your knowledge beyond your horizon. This is what LVP gives you. So in research environment at LVP, there are multiple factors actually. So what we do is that interdisciplinary research. What we do, we gain different research skill, like we use different softwares and other things. So this is what I thought ki, if I join LVP as a research optometrist, then I'll gain something in research field. So now the second question is that why myopia? So as an individual, everyone seeks for an answer to a question what they are in greatest interest in. So as I recall, during my clinics, I used to very fascinated about why do we prescribe atropine, and then how does it work? Why we are prescribing 0.01% atropine? Why not 1%, which is already there in the market? So these are the trigger questions which I generated from the clinic, and then it sparked me to proceed with the research field in myopia. So as a and the other thing what I want to mention is that joining the myopia research team at LVP, it gave me a tool to investigate different questions what I have thought in my clinical days. So I think it has an opportunity to be in a myopia team.
That's right. So wonderful. Thank you for sharing that experience. I think this is important to kind of put in the thoughts of the young optometrists, and even a couple of them who are thinking, what should we do or what's next? There are opportunities. I think there is really somebody who can guide you in those aspects, and that will be important for your personal as well as good for your patients as well at the same time. Great. I do have a couple of questions for the others, but I'm just very excited, to be honest, to take the questions which have, popped up on the chat, and very interesting comments, I would say, as well as the questions. So I would just direct to Dr. Pawan.
Just to summarize what Satish and Swapnil indicated, I think both of them are, very fascinated to ask questions. Right. They don't accept things as is.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important as a researcher. You have to be questioning, why is it this? And right. Both of them being the optometrists, I think, myopia being, one of the core areas, sort of refractive error. I think it should be easy for us to really enroll into this zone.
Correct. Yes, that's. Thank you for that summary. Yeah. The couple of questions I'm just gonna direct to Dr. Pawan. There are a couple of questions which have popped up. Would you want to take them, and then we can continue the rest of our panel?
Sure.
Yeah.
Which question should I be saying? There are a lot of questions.
I think we can start from the question about the etiology and the aspects of myopia progression We kind of have that background knowledge. We don't have that, the mechanisms and all of that. Would you want to comment on that aspect?
Unless we understand the true etiology aspects of myopia progression, we would always run after a kind of trick to slow down the process. What do we really know about deep mechanisms controlling the actual growth? Chasing the cause is different from acting on. Absolutely, brilliant question. No, I mean, you always say it's chicken or egg. We don't know, is it a consequence or are we really hitting at the cause? Well, if you had known this answer, maybe there is no need for debate and there's no need for, the asking the question. So I think the answer is, there is no clear answer. There is no straightforward answer to what is the one element that is triggering. So you always say it's a multifactorial. These are the factors that could be triggering. There's no way we can say these are the only factors. It's very difficult to say that. I mean, there's deep mechanism. I'm assuming if it's to do with the artificial intelligence or maybe deep learning mechanisms might have potential, for us to unravel, what's really hidden. Right now, with what we have, maybe we are not able to decode the signs of myopia. But down the line, the instrumentation might get much more better, much more improved, and then that it might help us really understand the causation. Very rightly said, causation is different to the association or consequence.
Right. Great. And there's one question. I think this question also popped up on the registration form about undercorrection. So there are some advocates out there for undercorrection of myopia to help in myopia arrest or to slow down myopia progression. What are your thoughts over that? And
you want to take it up?
I would directly say that there is no there is no efficacy or if the undercorrection is not efficient to control myopia progression, because over 50 studies have shown that undercorrection results in more myopia progression compared to who are fully corrected. So from me, the answer is no.
Yeah, so he's very clear, right? He's just saying no, and I think with evidence we know that as well. But that's important because I think as clinicians, again putting that hat, a lot of patients maybe walk into the practice who are undercorrected because they might have been undercorrected by their previous practitioners and things like that. So you need to be cautious as well on those terms and provide them the proper knowledge that that is not something which is evidence-based and is not going to work as well, right?
I see one question from Uma Mageshwari in the chat box. Can I take that?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Maybe I will leave that to Manoj to answer. So in terms of patient consultation, do you think it is more effective if the practitioner consult children, for example, visual hygiene, 2020 rule, outdoor, etc., instead of only talking to the parents? Manoj, do you want to?
I think that's a good question. Even a lot of the times we also encounter this question from the parents also. So they usually stick with all the gadgets, be in the room, less going outside. So I mean, initially as an anti-myopia strategy, for the first line also, we usually recommend these kind of the things. I mean, like the environmental factors, like they can go outside and play at least 1 to 2 hours and reduce the gadgets. And take frequent breaks like the 2020 rule. So take after 20 minutes, take frequent breaks for at least for 20 seconds. See something far away distance. So this is very good that we usually, irrespective of giving any sort of anti-myopia strategies, we will tell them to follow this one also. I think we can, irrespective of anything, we should tell this to the patients.
So Rohit, go on.
So I just wanted to add something. Like I think Uma is saying that should we talk to children directly instead of only talking to parents.
Yeah.
That's very important actually. So in my clinical practice also, I keep children on the seat and then there will be parents just aside. And then I tell both of them. Because if you tell only parents, then children don't understand all those things. And parents, there will be a communication barrier between what we say to parents and parents say to children. And sometimes children may not listen to what their parents are saying. So if we communicate with children also directly, so I think that's going to be very useful. And in fact, that is useful in clinical practice, day-to-day clinical practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think involve both of them.
Yeah.
In fact, I make them repeat what I said also.
Okay.
One step extra.
Yeah, 2020 rule, more time outdoor, less clear work.
Yeah. So we are highlighting the importance of the patient understanding what they need to do is really very important, because they are going to use their eyes how you recommend them to use, maintain the distance, 20-20-20 rule. And sometimes, I mean, the parents might be very strict enough. So they'll follow the book and not follow what is required to do, things like that. So it's really important. And very good key points mentioning that talk to your patients and the parents and not just the parents. Okay, great. I'm just going to take a couple of questions which came up on the chat, and I think these are case-based related questions kind of thing. And a couple of case-related questions have also come up today on the live chat as well. But just summarizing, there's one summarized question which I just formed up is, what are your thoughts on prescribing orthokeratology lenses in progressive myopia with a patient who also has an isometropic amblyopia?
Okay, interesting. So, Rohit, maybe you can.
Yeah, I'll take that question. So there are two things here. Now, one is progressive myopia. So now if it is alone progressive myopia, then your ortho-K lenses or even peripheral defocus spectacles or multifocal contact lenses, everything can be given. Now, ortho-K lenses works better if cylindrical power is lesser. Now, if there are cylindrical power also, then maybe we have to prescribe peripheral defocus spectacles where we can give this cylinder also. Now, in case of anisometropic amblyopia, I think we should go step by step. In that case, usually because of high anisometropia, so there will be amblyopia. So our first step should be to improve visual acuity there. Maybe for that you can do patching therapy or other kind of amblyopia therapy in different BTS or different systems or VR systems. So all those things. So you have to first more concentrate on improving visual acuity. Second step is now to control progression. So what research has shown that if there is high anisometropia or if there is difference in axial length between the two eyes, among all the anti-myopia strategy, ortho-K would work best in controlling or like in reducing the amount of difference in axial length. So I think in case of anisometropic amblyopia where there is a difference in axial length, ortho-K should be given if cylinder is less. So ortho-K would be the best choice of option compared to others.
Right. So a step-by-step approach is what we are conveying here, really, so that you manage and tackle each problem step by step at the same, and make sure that our patients are treated well and they enjoy their vision with that. Thank you, Rohit, for that very insightful thoughts. And I think there's another one connecting question, clinically oriented. We do have a lot of options when it comes to soft lenses, spectacle lenses, you have rigid gas permeable, different designs for myopia control. Which one is the real best myopia control lens? Is it the myopia control soft lens? Is it the myopia control spectacle lens? Is it ortho-K lens? Any thoughts? I think maybe Manoj can guide us on that and tell us about it.
See, actually, that's a very tricky question, because if you see all these, whatever you said, the soft multifocal contact lenses, spectacle lenses, even the orthogonal, it shows us, like similar kind of efficacy, like around by 60 to 70%. So, anything is best out of this. Then also, I would like to add one more point is like, see, if orthokeratology is limited to maximum to -5 or -6. So, and if you are choosing for the soft contact lenses, we are limited with the cylindrical value. So I think it's based on the prescription, we are choosing the best appropriate modalities is for the patient is best. That I would recommend to do that. So these shows a similar efficacies.
Right, correct. So it's basically based on not just which one is the best, but it's more like looking at the whole approach on what's happening with the refractive status, what is the patient requirement and demand, and kind of getting all of those thoughts onto the paper and trying to see which one works best or which one do we think will probably the ideal choice. Just a connecting question, I think just popped up on the chat. If let's say we can't choose any one of them, how do we decide for the patient? Do you normally decide for the patient, or do you kind of walk the patient through and let them choose which one they would prefer? Any thoughts on that? Maybe the people who are more clinical can take. Dr. Pawan. Yeah.
No, I think let's not shoot things in the dark. So that's the first thing that we have to understand. I think we should be the ones who should decide on, A, B, C are the possible options. Clearly, we cannot say this is the only way, you have to take this is expensive, but there are no other options. I think patient will go away. That's not the motive. The agenda for us is to ensure, the eyeball length is in control. We are worrying about the child as well. Like Rohit or Manoj indicated, Manoj, you have indicated, look at what could be triggering. I think we have to look at personalized myopia management. If there's no one, the fit for all. So look at that person, look at the optics, look at the biometry, understand the environment, near work, outdoor, what could be really triggering. And then you come up with, okay, I think A, B, C are my options, or, in that priority. And then you will propose it to the patient and the children, saying that, hey, these are the options. And I think this is good. And this is what we want to go for. And there's always plan B also. As I said, at times these are very expensive. If you say this is the only option, then you're not doing justice to the patient also. Right. So long story short, I think it's more personalized. We have to be extra careful before jumping on to prescribing myopia control. I understand it has become a bit fancy these days. Unfortunately, that, you have to give something. I think that's not the case. Even environmental strategies really work great in some of our cases. We have just said, hey, you don't need anything, go with the environment strategy, come back to us, see us in 4 months or 6 months time. Let's see if something gets better.
Right. Great. That's again very important. And I'm just going to take one more question, to just summarize what we have taught about today. And sorry we cannot take all questions today because of the time constraint. If not, myopia is not going to end in 1 hour. It will take a lot of time, and that's why we kind of take the relevant and the most important questions first. But we will get to all of those questions in some way or the other. But let me just take this one question. I think this came out twice on the registration as well. Is the recommendation on any online tools or softwares which you have, so that it will help clinicians to kind of monitor and explain the patients? And I think I'll leave it to Dr. Pawan to start first, and probably others to chip in if you have any thoughts.
Manoj, correct me on this. So we have a couple of myopia calculators. There's BHPI myopia calculator, there's Premo, and then we have come across Do et al.'s model as well. So there are these models that are available. And we felt that while we were developing our model, we felt that, hey, this is not comprehensive enough, that captures everything into the detail. It doesn't consider too many aspects, but looks at only one, chunk of the factors and ignores a lot of things. But there are, like I said, these 2 to 3 are readily available in the online platform that are there for us to use.
Awesome, great. So I think that's important, because nowadays people are into this technology and things like that. And of course, you can show them on the screen and show them on the paper, whatever things may be, graphically with all these infographics, and that really gets the visual information to the parents as well as the patients. I just added this to re-emphasize patients are very important, to just let them know what are you planning for them and what are you thinking about them and what's going to happen if things are not being taken care of. So it's really very important. Thank you so much with that. And I think I will take that one closing question, which we want to really know about is the IMARC. So, we want to know what is IMARC from the team itself, the IMARC, which is the Indian Myopia Awareness and Research Conference. And Dr. Pawan did mention that it is going to be held really very soon from the 18th and 20th of November this year. So, Dr. Pawan, would you want to share more about this conference, and what are we in for if we want to attend the conference?
Okay, thank you. So I think the IMARC we started in the year 2020. The goal was very straightforward. We said, hey, let's bring all the like-minded people who are interested in myopia-based research clinics to one platform. The only way we could do is to organize a conference and then discuss the entities in relation to myopia. So that's where we are. We want to really bring the like-minded people. Like we have about 75 people here today, so it's good. If you're attending this today, I think IMARC is for you. We organized in the year 2020 virtual, 2021 hybrid. Now 2022 we're going physical. Oh, thanks for sharing the screen. So we have got this website as well. Every time we change the theme. This time the theme is more clinical and more translational aspect, where we want to really take you through what's really happening as of now in the field of clinical myopia management. So on that front, we got a lot of clinical discussions, intense panel discussions. We have eminent speakers joining us from different parts of the world. We have a poster and the oral presentations as well. We are also planning for a myopia awareness walk on a Sunday morning. So please do join us for that. And then we're also looking at more interactive sessions. We also looked at the feedback that we got. Don't want to bombard you with a lot of research, but do not keep completely to the clinic also. Like I said, myopia is a combination of both research and clinics. Every session we have planned such that there is a invited speaker, there is a abstract for clinical case, then abstract for research presentation. So we are summarizing everything for that specific theme. Like I already indicated, it's a very fast moving field. We planned it currently for every year so that we don't stay really outdated. Unfortunately, like the questions that we got today also, the metropolization being shifting, what to really give, a lot of things we don't know. And unless we all come and join and then think on the same lines and be on the same page, I think it's very difficult. Otherwise, you say something, I say something, and it's all going everywhere. So again, the agenda is very straightforward. To bring in the like-minded people, the cause for myopia still remains unclear. So there's need for more myopia researchers. If you are in for it, please join us. Let's discuss. Let's understand more of the myopia aspect. I think the ones from the Indian subcontinent, we stand special. Instead of calling international, I would still call it as Indian, because myopia is still at the verge of increasing. It's not up there yet. So we are the ones who can really understand myopia if we start researching now, and you can really make a difference to the patient, because not everybody is myope yet. So you can stop them from becoming myope. There are a lot of things to be done. So this is a 3-day event. We have got workshops as well. The workshops are to do, how do you do peripheral refraction? How do you fit an ortho K lens? So there are 2 workshops that we got on day 1. Then we got different sessions on the 2.5 other days. So please join us. Note that 15th of September, 48 hours from now, we are closing the registrations. So, and closing the early bird registrations and closing the early bird registrations and the abstract submission, as I'm just repeating. So we said, well, if you are a real myopia researcher, or if you're a real myopia practitioner, we don't want to miss you also. So submit your abstract, avail a free registration pass for IMARC. And Fakhruddin also said, he's supporting 3 people today, whoever wins the myopia quiz. So thanks everybody, and thanks Fakhruddin and the OOLS team for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pawan, for taking us through, I would say, a teaser of the Myopia IMARC conference. It kind of really makes me to kind of go online and book my tickets to be there, and I think it is itchy on everybody's hand. I have been following this for the past 2 years, and looking at this year's agenda, where you have speakers from across the world talking about things. It is really going to be a fantastic feast of myopia, right? So thank you so much, panelists, for spending the 1 hour with us, telling us what what you have been, looking at it, and all of those clinical important messages which we can use in the clinic. And we do have a couple of messages on the chat. If you probably can have time to reply them here on the chat while we are kind of winding up, or we can get back to the questions in some other way to the attendees. That will be great as well. So thank you so much to all the panelists, Dr. Pawan, the leader, and then we have Satish, we have Rohit, Swapnil, and Manoj. Thank you so much for sharing your thought with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Fakhruddin.
Yeah. So online Optom Learning Series has also been very fortunate to kind of receive support in terms of the education support from organizations, and particularly for this session, we have received support from Cooper Vision, and I'm very, very happy and delighted to invite Dr. Justin Kwan from Cooper Vision, who is here with us today all the way from US, to share his thoughts, his ideas about the hotcake topic which we have been talking for the past 1 hour about myopia. So over to you, Dr. Kwan.
Thank you, Fakhruddin, and for the entire panel. Wow, what a great discussion. That's so needed because we don't often get to share ideas with each other. And when I was, doing residency and clinical research, it became very clear to me that research makes you a better clinician. So happy for this wonderful 8-person myopia research lab that's doing such great work. I want to share with you all some of what's happening in the United States, some of the work we're accomplishing together to understand not only the size of the problem, but what can be done and what might be effective for parents that you may be speaking with. So I'll just spend a few minutes here. The title is very poignant, right? What you do today as an Optom, right, can change tomorrow for these children with myopia. And some of you may be aware that the World Council of Optometry last year, April of 2021, they declared myopia management as a standard of care. So it's not just our vision, but a shared vision across the entire world. And maybe doctors of optometry might say, oh, maybe the science is not quite there, or it's becoming standard of care, but now we know it already is the standard of care. If we just take a quick look back in time, my site one day was available in Hong Kong as early as 2010, but it wasn't until 2012 that the first 3-year study kicked off and began, which is now a 7-year study. You can see some of the results presented at the Academy meeting or the British Contact Lens Association. Here in the United States, it was very important to get the regulatory approval by the FDA in 2019. And there was a lot of requirements, both leading up to the approval and even right now, as we're trying to satisfy what we call the post-market safety and efficacy, things that the FDA asked us to do. But this was a brand new category, very important, I think, for all of us. I think back to the IMC conference in the Netherlands this past week, and needing the regulatory bodies to attend and soak in and learn the science as well as we have. So the World Council of Optometry keeps it very simple with the 3 M's. You can see mitigation of myopia, measurements, and management. And so important to do all 3 and to start those early conversations. You've heard already, right? The India prevalence is, I heard, 21% or so and increasing. And by 2050, half the world will have it. I'd like to kind of share with you this one study in Southern California. This shows you 61,000 pediatric eye exams, and the 14 to 19-year-olds are already above 50% prevalence. And this data set was from 2013 and as early as 2008. So I'm sure the numbers are even higher now, and many of them are -3 or worse. In the United States, we measure the census and the population. So we submitted that last 2 years ago, and I used the census numbers to determine how many children with myopia have in the U.S. In our country, there's about 48,000 optometrists and 22,000 ophthalmologists. And so if all of us did myopia management, which we know is not happening, we'd each get to see 278 kids each. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there's more kids that need our help than those that are doing it. So for those, that think about managing glaucoma and we set a target eye pressure, right, IOP, I would like to maybe encourage us to set a target myopia level. Let's try to get these children through secondary or high school, off to university, no higher than -3, at which point the eye disease risk begins to increase substantially. And this paper is, very, very enlightening for me because it looked at 18 years in China, where there's retinal changes in young and older patients alike. And the average age of pathologic myopia is 48. That's very young. And with permanent visual acuity loss of 2050. Maybe some of you attending are low vision specialists, but we'd hate to send one more patient into your chair if we can do everything we can, decades earlier. Many of you know about this CLEAR study group. Carla Zadnik is the first author here, making sure these children have enough hyperopia, because if they don't, they are at risk, right? We think about like pre-diabetes or glaucoma suspect. So those that are plus 0.5, plus 0.25 under cycloplegia, we need to watch them more closely. And the best way I can do that is to share a bit from my own children. So this was my daughter getting her infancy eye exam at 8 months. She's now 4 years old. And then in the middle, my son getting his 3-year-old eye exam. And then on the right-hand side, my son getting his 5-year-old eye exam. Every time my friends from university and the city, they don't realize children should be having eye exams at this young of an age before symptoms even develop. So of course, CooperVision and many others are making big, expensive decisions, but ultimately to serve as many children as possible and to care for them as many years as we can to achieve that -3 target or less by the time they're 18 years old. Something that's very, I think, simple that parents understand is that kids grow up fast. And in this case, myopia doesn't wait because the younger the child is, the faster they progress. And I'm not sure how many of these products are available in all the markets across the country, across the world. I think about 30 countries have MySight One Day right now, but you've seen CooperVision make some acquisitions to also get some wonderful Ortho-K products, and hopefully see a couple of you. I saw something in the chat about Vision by Design in a couple of weeks. So please stop by and say hi. I will be there. And we do have some, other more advanced Ortho-K designs in GOV and Ortho Tool. Recent development is the CRT calculator on both the Apple Store and Android Google Play. So you can now use the 5mm design and likely using more 11.0 diameters to really maximize your success early on and hopefully be doing fewer changes and really helping these children again. So yeah, I know that different markets have different regulatory approvals, but in the United States, a lot of these have varying degrees of efficacy, and they're off-label, so to speak. But we always want to, as the panel has said, prescribe the treatment that the child will use because any treatment is better than no treatment. Many of you may be aware that the MySight One Day is a dual-focus optical design where the dark purple moves the light in front of the retina. So that's a signal to slow the eye growth. We tell parents something very simple, right? This lens does two things for your child. One part helps them see clearly. The other part slows the growth of the eye, which that stretching is the problem. They don't need to know about myopic defocus, but yeah, sometimes we can maybe give too much information and try to keep it more simple for them. It's not just about how many diopters of defocus. Notice we don't call it an ad because this is not a contact lens for presbyopia, right? This was designed for children in the very beginning out of the University of Auckland and John Phillips, which we got the technology from. As I mentioned, the 7-year study is now finished, and so I don't want to go into too much detail, but you should have confidence that children in the study started as young as age 8 and finished as old as age 19. So it's going to look very similar to the age of children in your practice. The first 3 years are a randomized controlled trial, followed by a rescue treatment. The control group was crossed over to my site because it was the ethical thing to help these children. And the final year, 7th year, was to remove my site, put them back into single vision to see if there was a rebound or a withdrawal effect. And good news, there isn't. These efficacy numbers are quite high from the first 3 years. And I do want to just highlight that, the next child you'll see in the clinic, you don't know if they're going to be a slow progressor or a fast progressor. We can't predict the future, but with my site, there is a proportional effect, which means that we help both the slow and the fast progressors, but we help the fast progressors more, which is really encouraging, as you can see on the graph here. And every year that you use my site, you get that benefit. This graph just shows us that untreated treatment on the x-axis, my site treated in the 3 years on the y-axis. So 6 years of following these children show us that 90% of eyes respond to my site. And if you think about metformin for diabetes, that only has a 50% response rate. So 90% is really quite excellent. And yes, I just want to highlight something here in the purple circle as I'm closing in on time. If you compare the orange line of the control group to the purple line of my site, you can tell a parent that your child's eye is growing 2 to 3 times faster than it should be. And my job is to get their eye growth back on track. And you can have confidence that every purple line of my site is essentially emmetropic eye growth, 0.1 millimeters per year, or less. I've heard discussion also on which treatment is the best, and this is a really hard figure to analyze, so I'll try to do my best. We have very many famous studies in the legend in the top right. We have the Carly Lam study, the DIMS spectacles out of Hong Kong. We have a Jason Yam with the LAMP study for low-dose atropine and the different concentrations. Pauline Cho, right, with her Ortho-K lens from 10 years ago in the randomized controlled trial. Jeff Wallin with the Biofinity multifocal 150, 250 ad. And at IMC, the International Myopia Conference, this figure was shown many times. And what we want to get is to target the emmetropic eye growth on the solid black line. Gray line is pretty good, if we can reduce the accelerated eye growth to the gray line. And then the blue is the control group for all of these studies. So what you can see is that my site in the purple and yellow triangles really get us the emmetropic eye growth. And the lower it is, the better. 0 is probably impossible, except in a few cases. I mean, sometimes we see shortening of axial length. But yeah, if we could get to 0.1 or less, that's a great efficacy. So you can see some of these differences between atropine, soft multifocals, Ortho-K. They may not be clinically significant difference, but they are lower. And that's what gives you, again, confidence in my site. And at least for us in the United States, that regulatory approval. So I know I'm pretty much out of time, so sorry for going a little bit over, but I know that many of us are on here tonight because we are passionate and we're dedicated, and there's still a lack of understanding and a lack of urgency by parents. They tend to know more about symptomatic things for their children, and only 1 out of 3 are actually worried about myopia. And so we have created in the United States, mysite.com, and a great YouTube channel. I encourage you to subscribe to this My Site YouTube channel because there's many videos of these children, such as Olivia and Madeline, 8-year-old twins who are both using my site. And I think when parents see young children that look like their children, they become more confident to start because 1 year of treatment early is better than 3 years of treatment late. Some of the tools, right? We need to educate visually to show parents what uncorrected myopia looks like, and some of those risk factors and how my site works and why these are safe and why we need to do something about this. So if you happen to meet the 4 of us at any conference, Felicia Timmerman, Kelly Volz, and Leah Johnson are all Optoms on the Cooper Vision and Cooper Vision Specialty Eye Care team. We would love for you to say hi or send us an email. We would love to learn from you all. It's a global team effort, as I said earlier. So thank you, Fark Rudin, and the entire team for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Kwan, for that very brief presentation and letting us through what is there in this space. After that panel discussion, I think you did cover every aspect of the question we had planned and what came in. So I think you knew the future, I guess, what's going to happen. And, you predicted it. And thank you so much for your support to the online Optom Learning series as well, and being our education support for this event today.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Yeah, most welcome. As I mentioned earlier, OOLS is kind enough to kind of arrange for 3 registration passes to attend the IMARC. And as Dr. Pawan mentioned about IMARC is an in-person meeting this year. So we would be taking care of the registration process of attending the conference. So we do have session planned next week as well as for the upcoming week. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you in the next session. Until then, take care, be safe, and I hope that today's panel discussion has given you a lot of insights to bring in tomorrow to your practice. Take care and bye-bye.